me and my mate looked at each other and it was like that was a cat. You could see just the way it moved. It was a cat and it was big. You sound mental when you say it, don't you? But I know what I saw.
I just froze. Didn't want to move because I didn't want it coming towards me or anything, something like that. You think, where the hell has that come from?
Welcome to Big Cat Conversations. We speak directly to people who've encountered one of Britain's big cats. We also discuss the bigger picture. I'm Rick Minter, and thanks for joining me. For our next guest, we welcome Louise from the Angus area in mid-east Scotland, fairly close to the coast. And we're going to be hearing about two incidents, 11 years apart, involving first herself and then Louise's friend in the locality. But we're also going to hear about a sighting Louise had many years before that, so 3 different incidents to hear about. So Louise, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Rick, for having me on the podcast.
Splendid. And I only just learned that you did have an earlier sighting because we hadn't billed that one, but you may as well hear it. That was even earlier, and I don't even know what type of cat that was. So tell us all about that. So where was it and what happened?
Okay, yeah, it was when I was living in Glasgow at the time. I just got engaged and me and my sister were on the train off to look at wedding dresses, and we were off from Glasgow to Ayr on the train. It was 1998. 1999, can't remember if it was the tail end of 98 or 99. Anyway, I was on that train and it was part of the line where the train starts slowing down, and I was just looking out the window and there was a wooded area, and there in the wood, beside me, very close to the train tracks, was this big, powerful looking cat. And I remember at the time it was the opposite colouring of a German Shepherd, so that sort of fawn colour. And it was so muscly, such good condition. And I just couldn't believe what I just saw. And I turned to my sister and said, I've just seen a big cat. And that was it.
Did she see it?
No. It only lasted maybe about 2 or 3 seconds. And I was just staring at this big cat, couldn't believe it. The muscles on it were, a dog doesn't have that definition, only certain dogs, but this cat had pure muscle on it. And I was absolutely amazed. And that was it. That was a sighting.
Okay, another view from the train. It's always good to clock those up on the podcasts. And as far as you know, you were the only person who saw it.
Yeah, because back then, I mean, I didn't even have a phone or internet back then or anything.
Where would you say, location-wise, it was closest to, do you think?
Closest to Ayr.
Okay. What would you say species-wise? Did you look it up and think about it?
Well, I think it was a mountain lion.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, but it's better coming from you as the witness. So
yeah, I mean, it looked so strong and powerful. It was absolutely unbelievable. It seemed to be just either eating something or smelling something. Its nose was to the ground and it was just there, just as if, why shouldn't it be there sort of thing. It was just there.
And what sort of distance away?
20 metres or so. Not far. Yeah, really close.
Was it showing that it was aware of the train?
No, it was just in the foresty bit beside the train tracks. Wasn't aware of the train. It was just had its nose to the ground. It was just, I don't know what it was doing, but it was just head down, and I just saw this big cat.
How did you judge the scale? I'm not challenging you on that, but how did you judge the scale?
It was just obvious. It was just probably the scales judged in amongst the trees, and I only saw it for a few seconds, but there was no denying that that was a big cat. It wasn't if or, oh, is it really? It was, no, that was a big cat, and there it was. I saw it.
Before that, did you have any knowledge of the potential for big cats to be wild in Britain?
Well, you'd always heard sometimes on the news, normally down south, down in England, there'd always be something like cat evidence or, but apart from that, I heard that on the news, but didn't think too much about any of those things. I just didn't really think much of it.
I guess, though, still nothing can prepare you for one close-up in your home environment, in your own neighbourhood, which was the one in 2011.
That was like a totally different experience altogether.
Well, take us through it, if you would.
Okay, well, it was October 2011 and we'd just gotten a new dog. And I was waiting to take our wee puppy for its walk. So I'm in the kitchen, just looking out, waiting for it to get light. And it was about 28 to 8. And I said to my husband, right, that's it, light enough now. I'll take her out. So I got ready. She was getting trained at the time, so she was off lead. And we just walked up out of a garden, up the path, and along into a sort of wooded section. I saw something moving in the distance, just like a fawn colour thing, and I didn't think much of it. I kept on walking, and then again I saw it again, just this sort of movement in amongst the trees and the longer grass. And then I stopped, maybe about 25 metres, because I didn't want to spook whatever it was. I wanted to let it out without spooking it. So I stopped still, my dog's still at my feet, and then this big cat just walks out sort of sideways, so I'm seeing the side profile of it, and it just walks out from the trees and the grass. And then it just stops middle of the path. At that moment, it was an experience I've never felt before, Rick. It was like I had no emotion at all. I wasn't scared. I wasn't excited, nothing. And I've always said that if there was a bus or anything behind me, it could have ran me over. I was just totally transfixed on what I was seeing. And then I only got fearful when the cat stopped in the middle of the path, and then it brought its head down and round, and then it stared straight at me. And at that moment, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And still to this day, it'll bring a tear to my eye thinking about it. Not so much the cat, but just my emotion that I felt that day. And I didn't want to look at the cat any longer, so I just put my eyes to the ground. I stood still, put my eyes focused sort of on the ground, and just reached as best I could to feel for my dog's collar, put her on the lead, and ran home. And I know that you're not meant to run, but that's what I did. And I just ran all the way home saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and just ran.
Yeah, what kind of distance away was it from you?
I think I must have stopped about 30 metres. Earlier on in the week, Rick, it was the same sort of atmosphere weather-wise. It was like on the Monday, I'd walked up that same route and it was the same conditions. So it was foggy, it was dense, very still, sort of dense atmosphere. And I'd come across a deer that day, and we got within 3 metres of each other, and it didn't realise I was there. So it was exactly the same conditions on this Thursday. It was dense and foggy and very, very still. And I think it just didn't hear me coming as well, but it was very emotional for me.
How did the dog react?
She didn't. She didn't even know it was there. Nothing. I mean, she was only probably, I think, 12 weeks at the time, 10, 12 weeks. She'd just had her injections, 12 weeks, I think, because she'd had her 2 sets of injections, and then it was, I think, a fortnight after that. So she was 12 weeks only at the time, and she was just by my feet. She didn't move at all. She was at that stage where she wouldn't wander at all. She was just walking by my feet. I do think it was strange. Why didn't I pick her up? I just let her run by my feet. I think, why did I not pick her up and run? But there we go.
Okay. Now, before we get back to your emotional reaction, we better have a description of the cat, its scale, its form, its colour, its patterning.
Yeah, well, it was sort of fawn in colour, and it had sort of darker markings, I would call them. Now, it wasn't like stripes or spots, but you could tell there was a dark markings throughout the coat.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 3 foot 9 inches body length. I didn't notice a tail, and that's not to say there wasn't a tail, because of course cats have tails, whether they be long or, short, but I didn't notice a tail. but it had really sort of pronounced eyebrows, if you can call it. Like the brow was really heavy and staring when it stared at me, like a dark stare. It was evident the eyes were dark, or the brow was dark, or it had a sort of staring motion. I didn't notice the ears, Rick, of course, they had ears as well, but I just didn't notice.
I know from our emails and previous discussion, you feel that it was most likely a lynx, do you?
I think so. I mean, it wasn't sort of muscly like a cougar or anything like that, and it didn't have that sort of cougar nose or anything like that, where they're sort of pronounced and long in the nasal sort of region. It did have more like of a cat-like face and not that long sort of nose that a cougar would have. Average build, I would say. It wasn't skinny. It wasn't really deep and furry though either, if you know what I mean. It didn't have a big, thick, furry coat, I would say.
And what sort of scale? You said you thought the body was well over 3 foot long.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, because as well, I took a measuring tape afterwards and measured the path because it stood in the pathways sideways. I knew exactly how long it was and measured it because it was sort of silhouetted within the path. So I could get the scale from the path to how long it was. So I know the body was about 3'9", and that wasn't including the head.
Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable size, certainly. Now, the eyes are interesting. I mean, I always think lynx, the Eurasian lynx, look like they wear spectacles, if you look. They've sort of got rimmed eyes and sort of markings to the side of the eyes, like a sort of a pair of spectacles holders.
Well, the eyes were the sort of main feature, I would say, of, just the staring eyes, like a heavy, heavy brow. And I just didn't like what it was. I didn't like the staring.
What do you think it was doing, by the way?
When I first saw it, when it was just in amongst the grass and the trees, it was just moving about. I didn't know what it was at that time. I just saw something moving about. So I take it was just smelling about the place. Yeah, and then when it walked across the path, it was just doing its thing. It must have sensed me just standing there, because I was absolutely motionless at that point. I wasn't moving at all when I was standing and staring at the cat. So it must have sensed I was there and, turned and just stared at me. And that is when my emotions kicked in, from this void of no known emotion to absolutely, I was pretty scared.
What kind of attitude to you did the cat take once it had noticed you?
Well, I don't know, because I turned. I didn't want to stare at it anymore, Rick. I just didn't want to look at what I was looking at. So I looked at the ground. I just looked at the ground. I didn't want to look at it one split second more.
You didn't catch it in stalking mode to start with. It wasn't in a threatening...
No, it wasn't threatening. It just looked as if it was smelling around the place.
So it let you run away, basically?
Well, it must have done, because I ran and I got home safely. And I've not a clue what happened, obviously, if it just walked along or, well, it must have done walked away and out. I just will never know how it reacted to me, because I just didn't want to look at it anymore.
And this is on a dog walking route local to you that you know very well?
Well, not at the time, because it was a new dog. I had been up the sort of area before, just walking without the dog. But yes, it is a dog walking route. Yeah.
So back to your behaviour of this sort of completely neutral emotional stance. What do you think was behind that? Is it because it was something that you'd had no experience of, yet it was so striking, and so there was nothing that your psyche could draw upon? Is it that kind of simple?
Exactly that. I have never, ever experienced anything like that before. It was just a complete emptiness. It was as if the cat and me were the only things in the world, and I was just staring at the cat, and it was staring at me, as if there was no other thing in this world apart from us two and the path. It was the most bizarre feeling. And as I say, that all turned in a split second when that cat turned and stared at me. And then, oh my God, I was panicking.
Because it was so close, do you think?
Just because I didn't like it staring at me and thought, because when you saw the cat, it's like, oh my God, it's a big cat. And because I felt really vulnerable, I mean, I was just there with my little puppy all by myself. I don't want to experience that emotion again because it wasn't pleasant.
Even though it wasn't in threatening mode?
Even though it wasn't in threatening mode, I just didn't know what could happen. In fact, when I was running home, Rick, afterwards, running down the path home, I just imagined 2 big paws coming onto my shoulders and taking me down. That's all I was thinking when I was running.
Well, they'd probably be a bit more interested in the dog, actually, although the dog presumably is only a Malteser size for a cat like that anyway.
Yes,
Now, say you'd had a camera set and ready to go in your hands at that time. Do you think you would have got a photo, or was it just so alien from your emotions and your processing of what was before you that you wouldn't have even managed a photo?
I couldn't have taken a photo then. I just wanted to be home. I just wanted to be home. That's all that was going through my mind at that time. So no, I couldn't have taken a picture then. It could be different now, Rick. Because I've experienced it, it would be a different scenario now and I would take a picture. But not then.
And would you have had time?
Oh yeah, I would have had time. Yep.
And it would have been in your pocket, you could have got it out in 5 seconds and turned it on and everything?
Yep, I could have, yeah. In fact, when I went for the dog walk and everything, I didn't even have a phone then. But afterwards, I would take a camera and a phone with me, just in case.
To what extent did it affect your following dog walking with that puppy? Did you go back to that area much?
Well, because she was just new, I knew I had to. But for the first 2 weeks, I went a different route. And then after the 2 weeks, my husband had to come with me and gradually come every day and then just maybe not come as much. I did that for about a year to a year and a half. It just got too stressful for me, Rick. I couldn't do it anymore. And I stopped all dog walking. I've only on a handful of times been up there myself again with her, and it's just too stressful. I go a different route.
Well, that shows you how vivid the experience was.
Yep, it wasn't a good one. When you hear people think, oh, it's amazing. Well, it wasn't amazing for me. I just didn't like it at all.
Were you tactical about who you told, or did you feel it was a sense of duty to tell people you knew might go there for dog walking, or did you decide not to tell some people because you worried how they might think of you?
I'm not really bothered about what folks think of me. I'm that sort of person, but I knew I had young family at the time, Rick, so I knew that if it were me and someone else had been walking with their small children, I'd want to know there was a big cat out there. So I actually, when I got home, I phoned the police, Rick. So I've got an incident number and everything. I phoned the police. I've got the incident number still and phoned the police. They didn't get back to me that day. In actual fact, I phoned them later and they'd actually left a message on someone else's answering machine, but that's a different story. But there we go. So I just thought, how do I let people know there's a cat out there? So anonymously, I went to the papers and just to let them know what I'd seen. I told my neighbours around me, my family, and a few select friends, and that was really it. I didn't want my kids to find out there was a big cat around at the time because my youngest was only 6 and she plays in the garden, which leads on to where I saw the cat. So I never wanted them to be fearful of playing in the garden or anything like that. So I just told who I thought needed to be told, and that was it.
Okay. And what kind of reactions did you get from that experience?
Neighbour was a policeman at the time and he'd heard of stories before. Another neighbour thought, oh, have you not just seen a deer? So that was a little bit dismissive, but everybody else was interested and keen to learn more, probably.
Okay. That's heartening, isn't it? And what about in the local newspaper? Was it a time when people could write comments under the story?
There was various comments on the internet, but not really anything. It wasn't like a huge big paper. It was more just like the local paper. But I just wanted to let people be aware, just to look out, just to let your kids not run 100 metres ahead sort of thing. Because I couldn't live with myself, Rick, if I knew that and didn't say anything.
Gentle local awareness raising, basically.
Yeah, that was it.
So it did affect you quite a lot, really, in terms of your emotions and your activity afterwards, where you went to walk your dog, basically.
Oh, yeah, because I went to like a different location and then I just stopped walking the dog altogether, really. In the end, it was just I used to take my camera and used to take pictures of paw prints and stuff, and then I'd see something move and I think, oh my goodness, what's that? And it would be a fox or whatever. And I thought it was just like the panicking all the time. It got too stressful and I just decided no, which was a shame because it ruined my dog walking experience, really. And also the fact, Rick, as well, that I only told my children, who my youngest is now 17, I only told them last Christmas about this. That's how long I have kept it a secret from them, because it was just a big thing for me at the time.
Yeah, sure. So you didn't want to revisit it in your mind and you didn't want to deal with their kinds of questions and maybe concerns.
Yeah, it was just like, it was still so emotional. I mean, I can still almost get a tear in my eye thinking about my experience. But I do feel as if it's been lifted since I've actually spoken more openly with the kids about it now and it's out in the open. That has done, it's made a difference.
Having said that, I'm guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you wouldn't have wanted any harm to come to that animal.
Yeah, lynx are probably out there. That is probably what I've seen. And they have obviously been around for years and they've not done any harm to anybody else. Had it been, though, a mountain lion, it's a bit different. They are so big and powerful, some of the big ones. I wouldn't want anything nasty done to it, but, I mean, if I was terrified at the lynx, imagine what I would be like at the mountain lion.
They're a notch up, aren't they?
Yeah.
Can we now go forward to the events of this year, 2022? In fact, this episode is coming out in January 2023, but we're speaking in December 2022. And it was back in the summer, wasn't it, when there was a local incident near you which made this all be revisited, basically?
Yep, it brought it all back home again. So my friend, who was one of the only friends that I told at the time, we'd been away for a weekend away and I was dropping her back off at her home and I was speaking to her husband out in the garden at the time. And just before he said goodbye, he said, Louise, I've got something to tell you. And at that very moment, I knew, Rick, what he was about to say. I knew it. I just knew it. And he said, I've seen a big cat. And so he went on to tell me about what he'd seen that previous night. He'd set off out about 10 o'clock to walk their dog. Previous to this, Rick, as well, they'd been hearing strange noises for about 3 weeks previous to him seeing the cat outside their house, and they didn't have a clue what it was. So anyway, he'd set off to walk his dog, and he heard this noise, the same noise that he'd been hearing previously, and looked across, and there was this big cat on the wall. And it was lying down, making a lot of noise. It just was interacting with him by making all these strange growling type noises. So he stood and stared at it for a while, a minute or two, and then he proceeded to walk down the road again, to walk his dog further down, and then he just had the urge to look back. And there in the middle of the road was the cat again. And again, it was really interacting with them, making a lot of vocalization noises and had a huge focus and attention staring at him. And then it went up a lane went back down again, went back up, and he never saw it again. And he said if push comes to shove, he would say, this was dark, so it was only street lamps that were on, he would say it was grey in colour. He said it was about golden retriever size, and it had like a distinctive sort of arched back, and his dog wasn't really doing anything when it saw the cat, but the cat certainly was making a huge amount of noise staring at the pair of them. And now my friend's husband is a 6'3" man, very fit and healthy. And he was thinking, how on earth, when this cat was in the road, how on earth am I going to get home? Because this cat is in the way of me and my house. I mean, his dog is, it's a fair age, but he also thought, it could easily take his dog, and he wouldn't come out too great either. Yeah, it sounds as if that was like a big cat with a powerful nature that would damage his dog and do a bit of damage to him as well.
What did he make of the behaviour? Did he say how he interpreted the behaviour and the noises?
Well, I sort of asked him at the time. I said, what did you do and everything? And, but he didn't really do anything. He was just staring, probably like me, just staring at the cat. I think he was thinking that it could attack this cat, because it was making a lot of growling type noises, and he was spooked about it. So that was on 3 separate occasions. He saw the cat, so he had an even better interaction, because I only saw the cat once. He saw it once on the wall, once in the middle of the road, and then it went up the lane and came back down again. And so he saw it 3 times before it disappeared.
Realised then that's what he'd been hearing on previous days?
Well, yes, because not even days, Rick, weeks. For the east of Scotland this summer had a severe drought. I mean, we didn't have any rain for weeks, and it was really quite hot and dry. So there's no water in the puddles or anything like that.
Yeah, like a lot of England and Wales.
In fact, my friend, her husband and their son had all heard these strange noises, mostly nightly, maybe about after midnight into the early hours of the morning, these strange growling noises, something that they've never heard before. Now, they have deer out their windows normally, they have fox, but they said it was something totally different, and they didn't have a clue what it was, but there it was the same sound, so it was what they'd been listening to.
The behaviour obviously wasn't explicit threatening, because I think he would have reacted straight away if he thought he'd been fixed with, an aggressive intent from the cat.
I think it was definitely warning him that don't come close. It was that sort of warning, like, I'm here, stay back sort of thing.
Yeah. And the dog must have, added to the interest for the cat.
Yes, I think that's probably it.
I think a dog on its own is very much more vulnerable, of course. I think a dog attached to a human looks a bit messy for a cat, even if it's hungry.
Well, we also thought that perhaps this cat was coming into some neighbours' gardens because they had ponds, and perhaps it was coming in because there was water available. But also at the back of their house, it leads on to, as I said before, it's like there's rabbits, there's deer, and there's fox all in there. But it was just the fact that they had never heard anything like that sound before.
It's all coming back to me now, because this was at the same time when there were 2 lynx sightings. In fact, both got very brief glimpses on smartphone cameras at the time in South Wales, close to the edge of settlements near residential areas in South Wales. And then we had this one in Scotland as well.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it, that this was in town. I mean, the edge of town, in a street. It wasn't as if it was in a lane or anything. This was actually in a street that this was happening. But having said that, that street then does lead on to farmland and quarries, and, it goes out. It is on the very edge.
The disorientation and change of behaviour of the cat's location and territorial wanderings may be to do with water availability.
That's what we thought. That's what we came to the conclusion of, that it was because there was such a lack of water. All the ponds and reservoirs and sort of thing had dried up. All the little nooks and crannies that normally have water filled in them, gone. It was just absolutely so dry. And we just think perhaps it had come into town further just because it was thirsty.
Did you ask him if he was pushed to say what species it was, what it would be?
He thought it could be a lynx. And just the way it sounded, then he went on the internet as well, I think, to hear lynx sounds and things. And he thought lynx.
So it didn't have much of a tail then?
Well, that's the other bit. I don't think he noticed a tail either. I mean, it's so ridiculous when you say, what did it look like? For all the times that I've seen the cat, I actually don't notice the tail. Now, the next time, if I ever see a cat again, I'm going to notice that tail, because I'll have it in my mind the next time. Ears, eyes, tail,
But it may be that he didn't notice much of a tail, and you didn't notice the tail because there actually wasn't much of a tail to notice in the first place, which would suggest lynx.
Yeah, you think, well, of course there's a tail, but why didn't you notice it? It's like, of course there's ears, but why didn't you notice them?
You can't predict how you're going to process it, though, at the time, can you?
No.
So much depends on the angle and the lighting, that sort of thing.
Yes.
What did they make of it? Did it freak them out? Did it influence them in any way? Or did they get on with their lives and just thought, oh, well,
Well, on with their lives, but they are very in tune now to listening out to those sounds again. And I think they have a greater understanding that, yes, there might be things out there. Because afterwards there was a deer that was killed on the road, and my friend was texting me, saying, oh, look at this, the body's gone. And so they definitely are more aware than what they ever would have been in the past now.
Yeah, alert.
Yeah, definitely.
How far away was it from your incident, from your probable lynx sighting?
About a mile, but they're all interconnected by the same pathwork. So it's just on the same path.
You've not heard of anything through the grapevine in between those two times? It's a long period, but it's the same sort of area.
I heard a little rumour from somebody else that there was a different cat spotted between our town and a different town this summer as well, I think. But nothing in between that, in between our sightings, which is 11 years. So I take it they're different cats, because he thought it was grey and mine was definitely fawn. It was definitely a brown. But there again, his was streetlight, so I'm not quite sure. He wasn't too sure of the colour, but as I said, if he had to name a colour, he would have said grey.
His dog didn't react much, you're saying, is that right?
No.
Because it didn't see it and experience it, or because it's an old dog? Or
No, just because their dog has its very own personality, shall we say, and if it didn't want to do anything, it won't want to do anything. If it didn't think there was a problem, there wasn't a problem. And it's older as well. No, it didn't seem fussed, because I did ask them that. What did your dog? Nothing.
And so, back to you and the future. You were telling me soon after this happened that you are very keen to try and get some evidence if you ever get the chance.
I would love to get evidence, Rick, but like everybody else. So I actually have a trail camera up at the location. Unfortunately, it's just the usual suspects. It's deer, fox, rabbits, pigeon, squirrel. No cat, just domestic cat, but nothing of what we really want to see. But I think these cats I don't think you can actually go out looking. I've come to that conclusion after all these years. They just seem to be sort of fleeting moments, and you're so not ready for them that before you have it, they're sort of gone. Whether, I've got the camera trap up, and I think I'm wasting my time. I think in the future, when cameras as well get better, technology gets better, I do believe that people will be able to get great footage.
Good you're persevering with it with the trail camera. I think you've just got to do that. It's a numbers game and a patience game, I think, and you may be lucky. Maybe put a second one up. If you're getting, deer and other mammals on it.
It's the right sort of circle of wildlife there,
Yeah, the prey.
So that could slot in a cat, bigger cat could easily slot into that, no problem at all,
And you'd like another experience. You'd like to see one again, presumably.
Yeah, but this time, can I have it like when I'm in a car or with a group of people, but not by myself? I could take a Lynx picture, but you see, if there was a mountain lion or something, no thanks, I'd be off again like a shot. Even knowing what I know now, I wouldn't stay around to take a picture if I was just physically, there was no barrier, if there was no car or anything, I would not be taking a picture. No, that's not for me.
That close, yeah.
No, there is no way. No, but I would love to see it with a group of people, or if you're in a vehicle or something and you're looking, that would be great. That would be so fascinating and fantastic. But not out in the open with me and a cat, especially if it's like a mountain lion or something.
Back to your sense of isolation and the world stopped still, just you and that animal, even though there was another animal, at your feet, as it were.
Yes.
With the puppy. In all the many reports I've had over the years, I don't think anybody's ever expressed that, I'm sure you're probably not the only one, but because people normally say things like, it took me a long time to process it. But having said that, did you process it? When it became clearly into view, did you process it as a cat?
Straight away, Rick. Just absolutely instantly.
Yeah, fair enough then.
That's another thing, Rick, is sometimes, when people say I couldn't process it or whatever, I was like, maybe it wasn't a cat then, or it was absolutely instant. It was a cat. And I was staring at it like a cat. There was no ifs or buts about it. There was no thinking of scale or anything. It was the whole of that cat, just the way it moved, the way it looked, just the way it was. I was staring at something that you would see in a zoo or something. In fact, Rick, when I ran down to my husband and said to him, when I got through the door and stuff, and he saw the panic on my face, and when I said, oh, I've seen a wild cat. And he sort of went, oh, that's really good. I said, no, not a wild cat. I mean, a wild cat, like something you'd see in a zoo or something. Because he thought I'd seen like a Scottish wild cat. And he was amazed at thinking of that. But I said, no. And that's just the sort of description as well, when you're sort of describing things. I described it as a wild cat, first of all. Of course, it wasn't a wild cat. I knew what I was trying to describe. It was like a big cat, not a wild cat.
The processing thing is interesting because you didn't have that, because a lot of people are trying to work out that it's not a dog, that they're thinking, hang on, what is that? And then they sort of conclude, oh, blimey, it's a cat. And they say by that time it's taken 10 seconds and it's too late to take a picture. So you knew straight away.
Instantly, because I'd been sort of looking at it, and I saw the fawn shape moving about and just walking a bit further and saw it moving about again. And then, as I said, I stopped and it just came out from the undergrowth, from the trees and the grass. And there it was, this cat. Almost like I was in a tunnel, as if the pathway was a tunnel and it was me and the cat. Absolutely nothing else was there. Nothing else. Not even my dog. I didn't even think about my dog. Didn't even think about her. No, it was just me and that cat. It was the strangest of emotions.
And people often say about mixed emotions, but for you to say no emotions, again, is pretty unique, actually.
It was no known emotion. It wasn't panic. I felt blank, a total emptiness, absolutely empty, void of all known emotion. It was the strangest thing. And as I said, when it ducked its head and twisted and looked at me, in that split second, my emotions came in there, kicked in, like, oh my God, I just want to be home. I just kept on saying I want to be home. And then, oh my God, until I got home.
That sense of vulnerability, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It was just not a good feeling at all.
And in terms of your general attitude to these cats being around and presumably naturalising. What do you feel about that? Do you think that's interesting, fascinating, good, bad?
It's always fascinating, Vic, because, everyone has their own opinions. And I've got my own opinion, and it might not be what you're expecting. But my opinion is that obviously there are big cats out there. I've seen them. But I don't think there's as many big cats out there as perhaps people think. And my reasoning behind that is that perhaps descriptions may sort of vary, like my description of a big cat, a fawn in colour with darker markings. Someone else might see that cat and say, oh, it was a dark cat with just fawn bits in it. It's amazing how people's descriptions can vary. Also, when you see on the media and the internet and things about someone saw a big cat and you've got footage, they're just domestics. I've yet, Rick, you're probably no better footage being in the position you are. But for me, when I say it's just domestics, or like dog prints, and it's a domestic, it's a moggy.
Well, I accept that. I think there's an awful lot of false alarms when people declare their footage. I think some of them we don't know. Some of them are real 50-50s, and until they're scaled, we don't know. So I wouldn't write them all off, to be honest. But I know what you mean. What I would say is, though, because something is just a slightly bigger than usual feral domestic type cat, doesn't mean to say that all the other sightings are wrong, though, does it? In my book.
No, you'll still have absolute sightings out there. I don't deny that at all. But I just think some of the sightings are like, I think it was, and you're just thinking, I was 100% at that split second. There was no denying what I saw, absolutely no denying. And when I sort of experienced that and listened to others, I think, I'm not quite so sure if they've actually seen or they've got the scale right. And I think a lot of people think they've seen one and, they really believe it, and perhaps they actually haven't when you've scaled it. It's amazing what scale can do. They're out there. Don't deny it for a second. I've seen them. But how many are out there? I don't know. They sneak around, obviously, and in and out before you know it, and they're gone.
But in terms of your attitude to tolerating them or not, or how we coexist with them, how we live alongside them, what's your attitude on that?
Well, I think we do just live. Yeah, we totally have to just live alongside them. They have done nobody any harm up until now, so you can just assume that will be what it's like in the future, and they're out there. Just let them get on with it, and we obviously just live beside them.
And try and learn a bit more about them, perhaps.
Oh, that would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? To actually know why they're there, track them, see where they go, because we only can sort of guess what their range is, but do they have a bigger range? Do they go a narrower range but longer? Do they go for 50 miles but only a mile width, if you know what I mean? Or do they have a broad... We just don't know because we can't track them. It's so frustrating, this subject, Rick, because it's all... it's just all ifs and we're not quite sure, and no one really knows for sure. And it would be fantastic just to have that knowledge of, yep, here's the cats and this is where they've come from, and we just need that knowledge. I would like that knowledge.
I think you speak for many people. I think in terms of that detail that you're talking about, I think the only way in this country we'll ever get to that kind of knowledge is if and when lynx are officially reintroduced, albeit perhaps as a pilot experiment initially, in sort of little clusters first, but they're radio collared.
That's it.
Yeah, but we're not going to catch the feral wild ones that are out there now and radio collar them. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think it's got to be a new set that are out there that start with radio collars, and we'll see how they do and where they go.
Definitely. I think that's the only way we'll ever find out how, where they go to. It would be so interesting, actually, wouldn't it, to actually get the proper releases out there, and just to see whereabout they are actually heading to and where they stay and their movements. And that would tell us a lot more about the ones that are here just now.
And whether they bump into and breed with the lynx that are already out there anyway.
Yes, and what it does to the population of other species out there as well. It's like all species like that, though, isn't it, Rick? It's like the wild boar and everything like that you get, which have bred into thousands now.
Yeah, they're already doing their thing. Well, thank you so much for taking us through these 3 different cases and the different emotions and the different people involved. Dogs in the equation as well always makes it interesting, albeit that both dogs surprisingly didn't react. But I suppose one was old and one was young, and they didn't clock the cats anyway. But before we close out, anything else you'd like to say that we haven't covered?
No, that's it, really. I mean, people that listen to this podcast will have an interest anyway, but if you've never seen a cat, just keep those eyes open, because they are out there, and hopefully someone else will get a sighting, and hopefully a better experience than me, because mine wasn't good. When I spoke to my husband initially about the cat sighting, I lived in Glasgow at the time, and I'd come in and sort of told him about the cat seen on the train. This was the train one. And he sort of almost poo-pad me at the time, But here we go. He was coming back driving from Fife one night, and he got into the flat in Glasgow at the time, and he looked weird. And he said, I can't remember, I just said, oh my God, you've seen it. I know again. I just said, oh my God, you've seen a big cat. And he said, well, I don't know what it was, but something black. It could have been a Labrador, but something black ran in front of me in the car. And I just thought, there you go. I knew it. And after that, I think he believed me and my sighting after that.
Yeah, very telling.
And also one more thing, when we got our dog up north, actually, bizarrely enough, where we got from the breeder, she kept like servals and things outside.
For breeding savannah cats?
Yep. And when we went up to get our dog's called Maggie, she's a border terrier. But when we went up to get her, we were dumbfounded, because there were security cameras and there was these cats like in cages outside. And that was like in 2000. Well, Maggie was 2011. So 2011, she's just stopped, I think, this year or last year breeding. But you can have a wee look, and it's amazing, because she was trying to get rid of all her cats that she's been breeding from, because I think it was about £20,000 that she spent on. I can't remember. It's like, it was big money at the time. She spent on this cat. And there it was for us to see. Just interesting that a dog breeder had this cat.
Because it's good money. She realised it was good money, and she knew what she was doing, perhaps.
Yeah, but it was just so strange to see. You hear about these exotic breeds, and there we go. I saw one as well. And that was just of interest, just to see that who else has got like different. No, that's not a big cat, but you know what I mean.
Big enough, though. Servals are big enough. Almost the size of a lynx, and
yeah,
they are the new ones that are seen sometimes.
Well, there you go, because she had them in a cage outside with lots of security though, at the time,
You say it wasn't good, but looking back on it, it influenced you in a positive way overall, I hope, hasn't it?
I'm not quite sure. I'm a little bit obsessed. Well, I'm a little bit obsessed about looking into cats now, which isn't so good, because sometimes I've got to take myself away from that, because you do get obsessed about it. But I think I'm much better now that I have got it out into the public a little bit more, and I can just feel a little bit more happy about my initial experience. And it's really interesting to find my friend's husband had that fantastic experience as well, because I just thought, oh great, someone else I know has seen a big cat.
And you could tell by his tone what was coming. That is fascinating as well.
I could tell straight away, Rick, what he was away to say.
Good stuff, yeah. Keep on the case, and I know that you're in touch with Paul MacDonald and his colleagues, so that's excellent. Well, keep in touch. Thank you for coming on the show, Louise. All the best.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much.
Well, we stay in Scotland for the announcement of the runner-up of our poetry entries. Last episode we read the winning poem from Chris in Gloucestershire. Well, the judges' voting was extremely close and Carol from Scotland came in second, so she has won a t-shirt and some Big Cat branded ale, which will be with her soon. Carol is someone we heard from in episode 76 and she is in the Angus area, so reasonably close to Louise, who we've just heard from. And here is Carol's entry. It's titled, We Are Here. We are the visions locked in your head, that doubting niggle you cannot shed. We are the cats that lie in wait for the unwary victims we're about to create. You, the fortunate, who saw through our veil a glimpse of our mystery or eerie wail. Ours are the prints in the cold white snow, the scratches on logs which would test Poirot. That moment of our eyes' reflection. Did you really see it as we evade your detection? We have survived here for decades now. An indigenous species or escapees? How? You disagree. The debate goes on. I am right, you are wrong. To those of you who are the doubters, we are the only apex predators. So lock up your guns and leave us be, to live and breed in harmony. Thank you so much for that one, Carol, and congratulations on getting the runners-up spot. And we return to Scotland for episode 91 coming soon, and that will include the long-promised catch-up with Paul MacDonald, and we've lots of new points and at least one revelation to explore in that episode. So on to our words of the week, and we have another term for a group of cats, as previously we've had a glaring of cats and a destruction of wild cats. The other collective term is a clowder of cats, and that means 3 or more cats, as it comes from an English word clowder, meaning cluster. On the website for episode 89, under references and links, we've put a helpful little article which discusses these different terms for groups of cats. So I hope that's of interest to some of you. Also on that part of the website, we put a link to an article just released by the Smithsonian magazine. And that marks the new film about the superhero Black Panther from the Marvel character. And it explains the powers of the Black Panther superhero and brings in facts and information about Black Panthers from the natural world, i.e. black jaguars and black leopards. So that's a clever piece from the Smithsonian using the new Marvel character film to explain real Black Panthers in the animal kingdom. And another snippet on that section of the website, under references and links, is a link to the documentary Panther Britannia from Matt Everett. That's an extended and abridged version of Britain's Big Cat Mystery, which was on Blaze TV recently, and I'm sure many of you have seen and enjoyed that one. Well, Panther Britannia was available on Vimeo, but it's just become available on Amazon Prime, and you can watch it for a small fee. As we know, Matt and his team have done an in-depth look at the British Big Cat scene, and have told the story so well and done the subject justice in their work, so it's well worth watching and supporting if you've not seen it. And finally, on the Big Cat Conversations website, under episode 89, we've linked some footage that was taken in the snow in Gloucestershire in the cold and icy conditions we got here just before Christmas. Several listeners have taken a strong interest in that clip of footage, and it's of an alleged black panther following deer. And it's in a renowned location for sightings just south of Gloucester on the Cotswold Edge. Judge for yourselves anyway if you've not seen it already. And the story in the press comes with the usual range of mostly clueless, I'm afraid, comments from people, so those are best ignored, and judge the animal following the deer against the size of the deer. The photographer for that one was asked to get in touch, so more detailed scaling could be done as a follow-up, but alas, he hasn't got back so far. OK, we're closing out now, so thanks to our guest Louise, and thanks to everyone for listening, and of course a Happy New Year to everyone. It will be a key year for the podcast, with episode 100 coming up, and we're hoping to have something of great interest along with that one. Next time, we're in Gloucestershire, hearing from Andy and Claire, who are 2 experienced investigators in the Stroud area, and they've worked as a partnership for many years now, and we've plenty of reports and incidents of big cat signs to hear about, and even some glimpses to discuss from their trail cameras. Righto, as we play out, we must say thanks to Descant, because the Scottish angle for this show gives us an excuse to play Dance of the Wildcats. Take care, thanks for listening, and bye for now.